This is a continuation of the story of looking at my life from the perspective of my soul. I indicated in this other video about an experience that I'd had recently where I was asked to buy a presence which has accompanied me for many years. Whether I have achieved what I came into this life to do, what I, as a soul, a spiritual being, came into this life to put on this body suit. What was it that I came to do, and have I done it? And what I found is that this has opened up a panorama of queries and understandings about exactly what it is that the soul does and why this world exists. What is the point of it? This is too deep to get to an answer in a short period of time or in a short video, but it is enough, I think, to give some idea about what experiences that I have had in my long life, which what you could call being significant from a soul perspective. And the first time I felt this was as a student. I think I would have been 21, I think. Yeah, so when I was coming up to the end of my undergraduate year, third year at university, when people are taking their undergraduate exams, and something started to kick in, having had 3 years of living in this rarefied atmosphere of living with people, with young people exclusively. Nobody older than 21, nobody younger than 18. Exclusively was a very particular kind of living. But I was aware that was coming to an end. And looking back on it now, it was the first time that I really felt that there must be something else. There must be something more than this basic life of eating, sleeping, getting married, getting a job, producing children, living out a life of, buying houses, commuting to work, getting old and dying. There must be more than the outer stuff. So I started off looking for meaning, and I was looking for meaning in the way where I was kind of led to it, and that was in what you might call theosophy. And I remember I had, after my undergraduate year, I had a year out, and I spent most of that year in London, working in a soul-destroying environment, and reading, going from, I think it was Westminster Library, going from A to Z in the philosophy and theosophy sections, trying to get a picture of what it was that was interesting. what was important. And eventually I found something which rang a bell, and after a short while I realized I had a fork in the road, and this was brought home to me by my then best friend, and he says, you go down this road and I'm not going down there, you know, which this is the end of the road for our relationship. And I could sense that this was an important decision to be making. Anyway, I joined this organization, which was in Subud. I was opened, and things started to happen. Actually, at the opening, I had this experience. I didn't really experience very much, but it's something that I was aware that there was, while standing with my eyes closed, I was aware of being moved out of my body, and I was looking down at the room with me in it from the ceiling. And we were in a ballet school at the time, so it was pretty high ceilings. And I didn't really think much of it then, but it became clear that that was a significant prod, if you like, to my soul, and it woke up. And this was the beginning of being taken on this other route, other than the normal route that normally people take of getting qualified, getting a job, getting married. So looking back on it now, I turned away from that road. The next major thing that happened, which has affected, before this event, I had this feeling which most young men have of looking out for sexual opportunities, relationship opportunities, in a very much of a greedy way, without responsibility. This changed after I had this opening. And I eventually met this woman, Aisha, and I had this different feeling about her. She clearly had a very interesting feeling about me. And although she was a good deal older than I was, 20 odd years older, I think, we decided to get married. So we got married, much to the disapproval of people around and the support of very few people. But we were happy. But we had this feeling that we needed to get away. And we came on a honeymoon to Ireland. And we both, I think, experienced something when we came to Ireland. This was 1972 or 3, something like that. And we went to the far west of Ireland, down in County Cork, and we'd heard about somebody who's trying to start a community down there. And we went on our honeymoon and down there and spent a day or two down there and got on well with these people. And we decided that we would come back and move there, give it a go, start this community in this really wild place which overlooked Bantry Bay. So we did that. We moved down there, and a few other people came with us. And looking back on it now, we had this feeling of it being an exciting adventure, which it was, but it was, from an outward perspective, it was a total disaster. the relationships broke down very quickly, and the people who came with us went home straight away. We'd actually burnt our bridges, Aisha and I. We didn't really have the money to go back anywhere. So we decided to separate ourselves from this particular couple and try and work our way out. So I started the process of doing just that. What was interesting is really the first time, I think, that I realized, from the soul's perspective, I think I realized that I had to be not dependent on anybody else. I had to be self-reliant. So this really was the first time when self-reliance became something that I was faced with. And it came down, I remember it very clearly. We hitched ourselves to this couple, and they'd taken us down this route where I got to the point where we had all we had left was 50 cents, 50 pence, and that's all we had. Didn't have any other cash. And this couple had said, "Yeah, you're on your own." So that started this process. I went to talk to local farmers to see whether they needed any building work, and that started a process. They were delighted that somebody was around who could do building work. So that started a process of, I don't know, maybe 18 months or so. And I built barns and back extensions and silage pits and things like that. I actually really enjoyed it as it happened. It was very practical work in a very beautiful part of the world. Very wild. I can remember the summers with being cloudless skies, and it was just pristine and beautiful. And then in the middle of winter, the storms would come in all the way from Brazil, whipping up the sea and the ocean, blasting against the rocks, with spume traveling into the air, and feeling that there was elemental forces at work. So that was a powerful adventure. Eventually, when we had made some money, we moved. We were offered a room or an apartment up in a place called Helens Bay, just outside Belfast. So we moved up there, and I'd started then looking for work as an architect. This was in the time of the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and so I started working in a way which people haven't worked in the architectural field since almost the Middle Ages, and that was a bomb went off. You would then go the next day. Somebody would have assembled a workforce the very next day after the fire brigade had left. And nobody from officialdom were willing to turn up to those kind of places because they were viewed as being terrorist events. So there were no planning officers, no building inspectors, and they were just left to the architects and the professional people around to do the best they could, with a background of the government guaranteeing 100% of the costs of reconstruction. So I spent a couple of years there restoring burnt out buildings, pubs, restaurants, hotels, that kind of thing. And Aisha, she was working in an orphanage. and it's where we got on actually quite well with the people we were staying adjacent to. It'd been a couple of family who'd grown up, the children had grown up, they had originally built a granny annex for their mother or something like that. And the mother had moved in and had died within a week of moving in. So they had a granny annex available for separate, self-contained. So they got on well with them. It's very interesting. This is the point that I was made aware of in looking back at my life from a soul perspective. It was to do with people. People are why we come here, to rub up against other people. There are difficulties. You rub up against somebody and you try and do something with them and then you fall out. There's a difficulty there. And then there are other people you get on well with and you develop a deep bond with. Both of these experiences are net positive. And this was the thing that I was shown. Looking back, is that all the outcomes, all the adventures that I had been on, all the things that I had done, they were all positive. They all did something positive. If there was a difficulty, then it was a difficulty that needed to get fixed. Usually something in me that needed to get moved, or maybe it was with the other side, with the other people, is that maybe they presence and our conflict brought something to a head for them and allowed them to move beyond it or not. And the other extreme of people that you get on well with, you actually get a deep bond with those people, and they too have had a very positive effect on the development of the soul. You've made a soul connection with them. This applies very much with things like, particularly with your wives and children. They accompany you on your life journey. And from a soul perspective, you connect with them. You become part of them, they become part of you. And when they leave, you are left with a tear. And this is really where the next event made a big impact on me, which was when Aisha, she got sick. We decided to go back to England. She got sick, and eventually she died of cancer. But in the last 6 months of her life, she'd had some unsuccessful medical interventions of radiotherapy, chemotherapy, which hadn't worked. And in the end, she didn't want any more experimental treatments. So for the last 6 months of her life, I looked after her. So in that time, I just detached myself from the rest of the world and joined her in that journey of becoming, preparing to leave the body. And when I look back on it, I think, and I've seen people suffer in sickness and in dying. Some people get over it, but other people don't. But again, both are positive. And I saw this with, I felt this with Aisha after she'd gone, is that actually she needed that time, we needed that time to reconnect, to spend time together. She needed that time with me to slowly let go of all the things that hold us to this world. And the things that hold us to this world are things like regrets and hopes, anxieties, things like that. You know, anxieties for your children, hopes for the future. You have to let all that go. And that's very often not easy for people to do that, to let go. It takes a lot of pain, actually, to separate oneself from these things that hold us to this world. And I could see that that 6 months was needed for her, and maybe I needed it too. But here's an extraordinary understanding that came to me too, is that when she died, the day she died, I was shocked. I couldn't actually believe it. It's like it had come suddenly, even though she had, looking back on it, she'd actually left her body a week or two before she actually died. She wasn't really conscious. She was just in amongst the procedures that the doctors and nurses gave her for pain management. But from my perspective, when she went, I felt I'd been taken to the edge of the world and then left there. She crossed over and I didn't. So I had this jagged edge on my soul, which had been connected to her. It was now no longer connected. So that precipitated a number of things. I think what you might call now a mental or nervous breakdown for me. And it took me, I think, 2 years to recover from it. The first thing that came to me after she died, after I collected my thoughts together, was that I needed to get away. I needed to get to somewhere very remote, to where there weren't so many people. I couldn't cope with people. I couldn't cope with the pressure of people. So I had to get away. Eventually I moved back to Ireland. And that then is another story. I'll pick that up at that point on another occasion. But this clearly, up until this time, it's clearly shown me that there are no bad experiences. But what the soul, what my soul was looking for, was something beyond the ordinary. I think I was looking for some validation that there was more to life than the predictable things that I mentioned earlier. In the last few years, I realized what this actually means is that it broadly comes under the category of adventure. This is what the soul is looking for. It's looking for adventure. And there's something about adventure that is meat and drink to the soul. You think about what an adventure is. It's something which is unpredictable. It's something which is you are putting yourself at risk, at some risk. Because it's new, there's some expectation in adventure that there is a good time to be had. That it can be exciting and also maybe dangerous. It's not free of difficulty. But this is meeting into the soul. This is what the soul's looking for. This is what my soul has been looking for. And looking back on it, these are the events up until that time which has contributed to the clarification and the cleaning of my soul. There's much more for me to get through, and I will do that on a separate occasion. So that's the end of this one.